You're watching an amazing podcast from an amazing podcast company.
Leaked law enforcement documents, cold case mafia hits, and newly uncovered evidence that could potentially reverse a triple murder conviction. This is an exclusive 5-part series, The Organized Crime Task Force Files. Part 3, The Mummy of Mobtown, Who Dumped John Magda in the Struthers Dump. The facts from this story were compiled from information contained within investigative task force files from the Ohio Attorney General's Organized Crime Investigation Commission. Included are details about the crimes which have never been publicly released. These files were provided to us by a source who wishes to remain anonymous. On January 7, 1980, a man's body was found in the old Struthers City dump on Ariel Smith Road when a passerby noticed a boot sticking out of the snow. The man's hands were bound with plastic ties and his face wrapped in duct tape. The sensational headline from that day's Youngstown Vindicator read, "Man slain, taped like mummy." The victim was identified as 42-year-old John Magda, who'd spent time in state prison for burglary, but had stayed out of trouble since he was paroled in 1974. Magda, known as Maggie by his friends, was a low-level mob associate who was close with Joe DeRose. For much more on DeRose, check out parts 1 and 2 of this series.
We felt from our information that Magda was killed because he had talked to someone about things that other people might feel were dangerous to them. And the reason for that is, besides the information we got, is the way we found the body. Taped up like that, especially the face and mouth. Usually that's a message. That's a message that somebody said something they shouldn't have said.
Magda's official cause of death was asphyxiation. Simply put, he suffocated after his killer covered his nose, mouth, and entire head in tape. His killing was one of many to go unsolved during Youngstown's infamous Carabbia Naples mob war of the late 1970s and early 1980s. Over 2 decades later, the Organized Crime Task Force, which we've been detailing in this series, would unravel the mystery that was the John Magda murder. As you'll hear in part 3, the task force figured out who killed Magda. But to understand why Magda was murdered, you have to go back 6 months, to July 25th, 1979. That's when local bookmaker Jack Tobin was killed in the parking lot of his Austintown apartment. Shot in the chest with a shotgun from roughly 45 feet away, Tobin fired a few rounds from his own revolver before his lifeless body hit the ground. Tobin's death had followed 3 others over the previous 6 months, including Charles Spider Grisham, who was the best man in Tobin's wedding, James Peeps Canonico, and Robert Fury, all believed to be associated with mobster Joey Naples in some capacity. Tobin, however, was widely considered an independent. His widow, Patty, said he was friendly with the Carabbias and was very close with San Francisco 49ers owner Eddie DeBartolo Jr. In fact, they had gone to Miami for Super Bowl 13 together before Jack was killed. Patty said Tobin considered himself a businessman and didn't align himself to one particular group. There seemed to be more theories surrounding Tobin's murder than any of the other gangland slayings in this mob war. And not only was local law enforcement investigating, so too were the FBI and Tobin's own friend, Sam Francesca, the same skinny Sam we've heavily detailed in parts 1 and 2 of this series. Francesca first theorized that a local acquaintance, not mob connected, might have been behind the hit. His logic was that there was mud in the parking lot of Tobin's complex, and this man's car was also very muddy. Sam even took his theory to the FBI, but it was quickly dismissed. A more credible theory was that Tobin was killed to keep from finding out the identity of the 2 men who had robbed him just 1 month prior. At that time, Jack Tobin and his wife Patty were tied up by 2 armed intruders who knew exactly where to find a large amount of expensive jewelry. Tobin had made it known that he wanted to find the culprits before the authorities did. A drug addict from Maryland was eventually caught with much of Tobin's stolen jewelry. The addict's accomplice allegedly became an FBI informant and was never identified. but neither man has ever been charged with Tobin's murder.
More developments in the case surrounding the murder of an Austintown police figure. The man, whom police say burglarized Jack Tobin, will be on his way to federal prison shortly, as Tom Mock reports.
It was last July 25th when Austintown restaurant owner Jack Tobin was gunned down here in the parking lot of his Raccoon Road apartment complex. 1 month before that incident, Tobin and his wife were burglarized, and recently the man charged with that crime was convicted.
His name? Hugh Garland Buck, a 31-year-old Maryland man. A Cleveland federal court sentenced Buck to 6 years in federal prison for the burglary. That burglary took place at the apartment complex. Authorities say the thief netted more than $50,000 worth of cash and stolen goods. Tobin was part owner of a South Raccoon Road restaurant, but investigators believe that his business had little or nothing to do with the murder. Buck has another month to serve in a Maryland federal prison on charges stemming from driving without a motor vehicle's license. He will begin serving his sentence for the Tobin robbery sometime in late May.
Another theory flying around town had Tobin as a close associate of New Orleans mob boss Carlos Marcello, which supposedly made Joey Naples nervous, thus ordering Tobin's hit so his own guys could take over Tobin's bookmaking operation, which was allegedly pulling in millions of dollars a year. We asked Patty Tobin if Jack's bookmaking operation was drawing that kind of money, why were they still living in an apartment on Raccoon Road? She says that was only temporary, as Jack had invested in a company that was building an entire neighborhood of homes in Austintown. Much like law enforcement, Sam Francesca had trouble proving any of the theories out there, and his snooping was becoming dangerous, not just for him, but a female associate who we have chosen not to name here since no charges against her were ever filed. For the sake of this series, she will be referred to as Diane. More on that later. As noted, John Magda was a good friend of Carabbia's hitman Joe DeRose, who is still to this day considered the prime suspect in Tobin's murder. Magda was also friendly with Diane. One day during conversation, Magda let it slip that Tobin's murder had nothing to do with the apartment robbery. Still digging, Diane wanted more details. Later, Magda brought Joe DeRose to see Diane, and DeRose indicated that Tobin's death was due to problems with the Cleveland crime family. DeRose warned her to leave it alone and stop investigating Tobin's death. Instead, Diane told Sam Francesca everything. This brings us to the night of January 5th, 1980. According to Sam Francesca's associate, Charles Trehorn, who was convicted years later of helping Francesca kill DeRose, a plan was concocted to interrogate John Magda. First, he was lured to Diane's apartment, where Magda may have believed the encounter was romantic in nature, but he surely never imagined what was to come. When Francesca and Trehorn arrived at Diane's apartment, she greeted them and welcomed them inside. They were armed with a .30 caliber semi-automatic handgun. Here's an excerpt from Charlie Trehorn's 2001 statement to the Organized Crime Task Force on what happened next. This is an AI voice reading of the actual transcript.
We went into the basement. Diane came down. There was a couch and stuff down there. It was a finished basement. They were talking about, she says, yeah, Maggie's coming over, this and that. And then I believe the doorbell rang and she went upstairs. And that's when Mr. Magda came in. He came in and walked down the hallway from the back door. They went into the living room. You could hear them in there once they were seated. I believe Diane was supposed to say something to let us know he was on the couch. I'm not sure, though. And then we proceeded to come up from the basement, had the gun on Mr. Magda, grabbed him and brought him down in the basement, and we had these plastic cuffs, so we handcuffed him, and we had him sitting on the couch. Mr. Francesca proceeded to question him, and I had the .30 caliber carbine on him.
Okay. Prior to John Magda arriving at the residence, was Diane made aware of exactly what was going to happen? And now for the second question, did she know that you guys were armed?
She was aware that we were armed, yes. And as far as being made aware of what was going on, nobody mentioned that we were going to kill him. There was no mention that we were going to do anything but talk to him. That was all that I'm aware of, yes.
Charles Trehorn would go on to tell the task force investigators how Sam Francesca used a pair of needle-nose pliers on Magda's nose and finger in attempts to draw information out of the man. Trehorn says Faseska slapped him at least once, all while Trehorn had the gun fixed on him. After a while of this, Faseska did not seem to get the answers he was looking for. Now, still without confirmation that DeRose had killed Tobin, they contemplated on what should be done about Magda. Trehorn says it was his own suggestion that if they let Magda go, Faseska would be dead within a day. So the two men stood Magda up, duct taped his arms to his side, put an overcoat over his head, and led him outside to Faseska's van. Once again, here's Trehorn's statement to the task force.
We were driving down the road, and Sam was driving, and he told me to go in the back and put duct tape on John's... We duct taped his eyes so he couldn't see when we were in the house. He said, put duct tape on his mouth, because Maggie kept saying, hey, what's going on? What's going on? I got a piece of duct tape. I put it over Maggie's mouth. His nose was still open. He could still breathe. Sam's going, what are we going to do? I says, I don't know what we're going to do. He says, put some duct tape over his nose. He says, just so he can't breathe. So I went back and I looked at him and I come back. I says, this duct tape's frozen. It won't. He pulled over to the side of the road. Now he come out with a length of rope. Where he got that, I have no idea. Now that I look at it, if he had that length of rope, why, I don't know, but I'm surmising that he must have had some use for it for later reasons. I drove, he went in the back, he ripped the tape somehow, got off Maggie's mouth, so I'm hearing him yelling, Sam, give me a break, give me a break. Sam's yelling, shut up, you killed my friend, you killed my friend, you killed my friend. He's like out of control, and the next thing you know, I don't hear nothing from Maggie. Sam shuts up, and he gets in the front seat, and he says, he's dead. I choked him. He said, go down to Struthers. We went down that road he showed me. We went down the dump road. We stopped.
Who's driving now?
I'm driving.
You're driving. Okay.
We got to the point where the dump was. We saw a couch over there. We stopped. We got out. I helped him carry the body. He lifted the couch up on the side, put the body down, and he placed the couch over top of the body. Then he drove me back to Boardman, Ohio, and dropped me off.
According to Trehorn, the reason they dumped the body in Struthers was because it was Carabbia territory and it would look like a mob hit. Magda's pickup truck was moved from Diane's apartment in Austintown to the parking lot of the Penn Ohio Plaza truck stop in North Lima, where a Naples-protected gambling spot was being operated. The prevailing theory in the years to come was that Joe DeRose killed John Magda. Though no one could ever provide a realistic motive, now we really know what happened. Throughout their investigation, the Organized Crime Task Force referred to Diane as a suspect in Magda's killing. They tried to interview her about her involvement, but said her conversations with them seemed untruthful. They also intercepted communications between her and Sam Faseska while the latter was incarcerated in Kentucky, but never attained an admission of guilt.
Hello, this is a collect call from
Sam.
A detainee at the Fayette County Detention Center.
To accept charges, press 0. To refuse charges, this call is subject to monitoring and recording.
We've decided not to play any of the recorded conversations between Sam and Diane because she was never charged with a crime and her voice could possibly identify her.
Thank you for using Evercom.
Charles Trehorn led investigators to the weapon that was used in Magda's abduction. He was charged with engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity for this murder and that of Joe DeRose. You can hear about those details in part 1 of the series. Sam Faseska was formally charged with the murder of Joe DeRose, but he died in 2004 before that trial ever got underway. He was never charged in the killing of John Magda. In the final matter of the John Magda murder, the Ohio Attorney General's Organized Crime Task Force requested that the investigation be closed by exception, meaning that they believed they had solved the case but would never be able to secure any more convictions. Still to come, why was the murder of a mob-connected fence and ATF informant never prosecuted? and newly unearthed evidence that could upend a notorious triple murder conviction.
That was an amazing podcast from an amazing podcast company. Please click the like and subscribe buttons and share it with your friends. It goes a long way in helping us produce more amazing content.